NFL 2K5 is one of, if not the most, overrated sports games of all time. Most people will defend this game to the death, and they'll give you their 50 reasons why 2K5 is better than Madden 22. And they might be right in some aspects. There are certain things that 2K does better than Madden to this day. But the overall game, the overall experience of NFL 2K5, the game is obsolete in 2022. You can't just play 2K5 today and really get the true NFL simulation for a variety of reasons. I'm here to explain 5 reasons in no particular order why 2K5 is fucking overrated. Number 1, the presentation. The presentation was great for its time, and in certain aspects was leaps and bounds better than Madden 05's. But the commentary was one thing that was worse than Madden 05's, in the sense that Madden had a real commentary team. John Madden and Al Michaels. These guys, you would hear them on Sundays. Peter O'Keefe and Dan Stevens, you're never going to hear them on Sundays because they were a fictional commentary team. They were 2 voice actors 2K had hired to do the commentary. I have no doubt that if there was an NFL 2K6, 2K would have upgraded the commentary. There would have been real commentators. But we can't really debate on that right now. It never happened. But I will say 2K8, they did bring back the same commentary, same recycled lines. And the presentation in 2K8 was atrocious. 2K5 had virtual Chris Berman. He was doing the pregame and the halftime show, and that was great. And 2K5's halftime show is arguably the best halftime show in NFL video game history. I would say it really is, because it really replicates what you see on Sundays. Madden's halftime shows have been terrible for so many years. Absolutely atrocious. God-awful halftime shows, and the pregame has been lacking as well. Like I said, 2K5 was ahead of their time with this, and Madden should have done their best to replicate it, but they really didn't. Madden 10 had the extra point, and that was stagnant and stale and boring. Chris Berman, nothing beats Chris Berman doing the halftime show and his signature raspy voice in NFL 2K5. That was great. But like I said, that was one aspect of the commentary. The other aspect, Peter O'Keefe and Dan Stevens, it was just fake BS, and it would have been axed if there was a 2K6. No doubt about it. Number 2, another thing why 2K5 was overrated as hell is because the franchise mode was bare bones. You can't really sugarcoat it, Madden 05's franchise was better than 2K5's. Madden, it was much more in-depth. You had much more features to choose from. You could relocate a team at the end of the season and create the uniform. You had the Tony Bruno radio show. You had training camp and mini camp drills. What did you have in 2K5? Game prep? You really think I felt like scheduling Tiki Barber's yoga lessons for Thursday in week 5? I really didn't feel like doing that. It was tedious, and 95% of the time it just didn't work. It was broken. And if there was a 2K6, perhaps it would have been fixed, or it might have just been ditched altogether. Who the fuck even knows? But 2K5's overall franchise experience was very lacking. Very, very lacking, and it was bare bones. The progression was broken. Game prep was broken. The only thing really redeeming was, the Sports Center weekly updates with Chris Berman, which was, an extent, was the great presentation. Because, that game, 2K5's presentation was great for its time, and it holds up to this day. But the franchise mode was not a strong point of the game. The strong points of 2K5 were the presentation and the smooth gameplay. But that's my number 3 reason for it being overrated, is the gameplay itself. Playing offense in 2K5, the offense was smooth. You had better control of your players. The animations were better. Plus, you could go into the menus, you could set defensive matchups, you could set offensive matchups. You could have the in-game subs. It was a better overall experience on offense and some aspects of defense. But you would often see the same animations multiple times a game, sometimes multiple times in the same drive. I mean, let's not act like these animations were godly animations. These were not god-tier animations. They were great. I wouldn't even say great. They were very good for their time. And 2K8 improved upon 2K5's animations. But, I want to talk about playing defense in 2K5 because it was fucking boring. Madden 05, you had more control with the hit stick. You could actually lay out a fucking running back or a receiver. And you could really get the true feel of it because the hit stick replicated that all-out shoulder hit, that shoulder-to-shoulder hit. 2K just didn't do that. 2K5's player controls were limited in that sense on defense. There was nothing special about playing defense in 2K5. Whereas Madden, there was something special with the introduction of the hit stick. Now my number four overrated aspect of NFL 2K5 is the first-person football. First-person football was a great idea in essence. It really was. But the actual execution of this was abysmal, I feel. If you were to play this game for too long, let's just be honest. Nobody was playing first-person football for an entire season. If you were to play this for more than an hour at a time, you would probably collapse on the floor, possibly half dead of a seizure. You're just not going to do it because the execution, it was the camera controls were very shaky. This really wasn't a true football experience. First-person football was a great idea in essence, like I said, but the execution left a lot to be desired. And this is one of those features that probably would have been scrapped in 2 or 3 years because, like I said, barely anybody played it. And my number 5 reason why NFL 2K5 is one of the most overrated sports games of all time. The crib. People will go back and play NFL 2K5 and just gush over the fucking crib. Like, oh, I could get my NFL memorabilia, I could play pool, I could play all these different songs on the jukebox, I could collect trophies. Guess what? NBA 2K5 could do that too. It was a 2K standard at the time. You're gonna go back and play NBA 2K5 and say, oh, 2K5 NBA is the best basketball game of all time because it had the crib. No, you're not. And like I said, NBA 2K, that was one of those features that was scrapped. I think 2K8. Yeah, 2K8, the crib was removed from the NBA 2K basketball series. So it would have been removed from NFL 2K as well if the series had continued on, People like to say, this is one of people's reasons why 2K is better is because of the crib. But the crib was just one of those gimmicky modes that would have, it was meant to be in the game for a few years. It was like a multi-year experience, and then it would have been dished because how are you really going to build upon the crib? It's just the same shit every single year. It's one of those features. It was in 2K4 as well. Like I said, and another part of why the game was overrated was the soundtrack sucked in 2K5. Madden 05 was a nice mixture of rock and hip-hop. It was like what the real players listened to. Fucking NFL 2K5 was just like abstract, underground shit you never heard of, shit you don't want to hear again. The fucking soundtrack was awful in NFL 2K5. And that's part of the presentation. That actually goes back to my number 1 reason. So the presentation was better in some aspects, but Madden's presentation, people have been sleeping on Madden 05's presentation because, like I said, commentary was better, soundtrack was better, the menus were better in Madden, there were quite a few things Madden had that 2K didn't have presentation-wise. So yeah, that just about concludes it, and those all might seem like minor reasons, but, everything adds up. Not to say, no, I think NFL 2K5 was the superior game. I think it was better than Madden 05, but NFL 2K5 is obsolete. End of story.